What do you think life's like for the average Afghan now that we're gone, but, still pumping billions of dollars? And with, of course, I mean, what was it, 48 hours after we withdrew? I think I saw the videos of the Blackhawks being flown and people hung underneath them. I mean,
yeah.
What do you estimate life is like for your average Afghan?
Well, it's if it hasn't been already terminated, it's pretty shitty for anybody who was viewed as helping the U.S. and its allies.
Yeah.
Right. So, it's basically a massive game of manhunt being conducted by the Taliban ever since we walked out the door. And retribution has been harsh and quick. And there are people still hiding underground, trying to figure out how to get the hell out with their families so it's, and then for everyone else, I would argue it's pretty much like it was, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, whatever. I don't think for the average Afghan, things have really changed that much. I think I can't, it's hard for anybody in our position, right? We're so fortunate and so blessed and so lucky, right? When you think about it, you get born into a country like this, you have opportunity. I mean, everybody's got different levels of opportunity, and some people have shitty lives. There's no doubt about that. But, I can't even begin to pretend to understand how shitty it is for whether we're talking about Afghans or we're talking about someone who's living in the Gaza and isn't associated or linked to Hamas. But I suspect that, they just, you just make do, right? We don't even understand what that means. I mean, for the most part, right?
Yeah.
I don't. What does it mean to collect fresh water every day? To spend 6 hours, trying to figure out what you're going to eat or feed your family with, or how to get clean water. And that's an existence we can't even imagine. So, yeah, I'm not the best to answer the question about, what life is like for the Afghans, I guess. But for the ones who were our allies,
it's nothing
and they're
good.
still stuck there, it's not good.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people, when they hear the term $8 billion and they hear aid associated with that and it's being sent to Afghanistan, I think that most people, because they are compassionate and empathetic, that they would hope that money is being spent on water sources or electricity or infrastructure. And I just don't think that it is. What do you think? Do you think it would change anything if the U.S. stopped sending money to Afghanistan? I mean, there's the global optic, right? Like, we're not going to support, but beyond that, but beyond that, from a logistical perspective, I wonder if it would actually have any change.
Yeah, it's a great question. I suppose that look, you're trying to be optimistic. Some of that's got to filter down to the average person on the street, right? It can't all get stuck in the Taliban logjam, but maybe it does. But you take that money away. Look, it's not going to be from a strategic perspective. If what we're doing is giving money to the Taliban because we want them to not be so heavily engaged in narcotics, right? As an example, it's not having that impact, right? It's not like the Taliban's giving up the narcotics trade. They're not giving up the narcotics trade. It's too lucrative. And, is it going to encourage them to become more civic minded? What is our purpose? I see. I don't know. I'm asking that question. I don't know what our reasoning is behind giving billions of dollars to the Taliban. I don't know what our strategic. You open that book and you go, we're giving it for the following 3 reasons. Create what? A stable government. Keep them from allowing their turf to be used by terrorist organizations. Promote education amongst young people and women, girls in particular. None of that's happening. So I'd like to know. It's a great question. I'd like to know. Someone should explain why we're giving that money to the Taliban. What do we hope to gain from it? What's our objective? And then we could use metrics to determine whether we're meeting that objective. And if we're not, then maybe we redirect those monies.
Well, I don't think anybody's going
to. But to your point, Andy, nobody's ever consulted with me on this.
Yeah, I really don't think the people making those decisions are very interested in actual black and white metrics on whether or not the things that they hope were going to happen with that money are actually happening, because that's a very difficult argument to make when you say $8 billion, no change. perhaps, we can reduce that to zero and invest that $8 billion in our own country in infrastructure, security, whatever you would want to do with it, but somewhere here, as opposed to, sending.
Well, we're having that same discussion. I mean, look, it's all flowing, right? $2 billion is, we got a $2 billion aid package now, for Israel, and I think everybody understands. Okay, yeah, we get it. And providing aid to Israel and is something I think people understand on a certain level, except for all the anti-Semites that are coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
But then you got Ukraine and 80+ billion, and I think the conversation up until the point where Hamas attacked, and now that conversation appears to have stopped, was okay. Can we have some transparency? What is happening with that money? Can we account for it? Because yeah, we can all agree, someone should fire a rocket up Putin's ass, and we all want Ukraine to be victorious, and everybody's impressed with the level of courage and commitment they've shown, and the fact that the allies have stuck together as well as they have. But I think in part because of the experience with Afghanistan, with Iraq, I think our patience, that window, right, that time frame of patience in the U.S. anyway, has been compressed. Right, 20 years in Afghanistan, and now all of a sudden 2 years into Ukraine, fighting the Russians. I keep saying the Soviets, the Russians. Now it's only 2 years before we're saying, what are we doing? And that's an interesting dynamic. But I think it's the same concept. Look, $8 billion to the Taliban, $80 billion to Ukraine. All the U.S. public, I think, would like to know is why. What's our objective? Make it very clear. Right? Don't make it some esoteric, well, we're fighting for freedom. Well, yeah, okay, fine. But what do you actually, what's your timeline? You couldn't get away with that in business. I know that for a fact. Yeah. We work with a lot of corporations.
Or go right back to our travel claims. We couldn't even submit for, a certain amount of meals above that. The scrutiny that they had over me at a JSOC command when it came to the amount of money I spent per day for meals. If you're writing $80 billion checks, even though metaphorically, I hope Biden's not bottom lining actual checks. I'll just say this.
All right, here you go.
Yeah, for anybody listening, I'm more than willing to be given $80 billion with no oversight. If any organization is looking to do that, I accept this responsibility, and I will provide the same level of oversight that we are as a country with the aid that we're giving to Ukraine. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but I, as a taxpayer, would love to know, and I don't even know if this is possible, wouldn't it be great to know where your actual tax dollars went? 50% of your tax dollar went to this, 30% of your tax dollars went to this. Like I was about to say I would be happier to pay my taxes. That's not the correct phrasing of that at all. I would be slightly more willing to pay my taxes if I had a better understanding and there was some accountability of what was done with that money, because I swear we are acting as if we have this bottomless checking account and it's just John Hancock.
Yeah.
But
well, that's what we're doing. And that is what we're essentially doing. Look, I think the problem is, for the government's perspective, is if they provided a ledger book that says this is where your tax dollars go specifically, not just some esoteric top line, 30% goes to infrastructure or whatever. If they actually told you where your tax dollars go, I have a feeling everybody would march on D.C. with pitchforks and torches, if they still have pitchforks and torches. But